So I'm joined today by Nick Robeson, who is the managing partner and CEO of Boyden. Those of you that haven't heard of Boyden, which will be few and far between, I'm sure, in the UK, they're an executive search firm. They're in 45 countries, and Nick heads up the UK and Ireland and has been doing so, working in this space for over 25 years. So father of 4 boys, into the space continuum, which we might delve into when we think about leadership. And I'm going to hand over to Nick. Nick, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast, The Best is Leadership. Would you make your introductions?
Lovely to see you. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to this. I've had 33 years, I think, in the human resources executive search recruitment space. And I've had the joy of being an employee and then leaving to set one up and then creating my own and selling one and going again. So I've been in the space of working with organizations looking to hire talent and to improve their senior executive teams for it's a bit scary now, right? So suddenly you get into your 50s and you're going, I'm now that next generation, right, that needs to be thinking about succession planning and all of those sort of things.
Yeah. Yeah, so and obviously I'm so excited to have you on the podcast because we're all about leadership and performance, and you wear almost like 2 hats. You're the leader of a really successful business in search of really successful leaders. So I'm trying to get all your unfiltered insights about what is the magic, what would you say differentiates. Maybe we could kick off and I can talk about what has seen you through as a successful leader of a big firm in a multinational?
Yeah, look, we making mistakes. Honestly, still making mistakes, right? And I think what's taken me through is being able to react to those mistakes quicker and better and more effectively than on the previous occasion. So, we're all expected to know everything, and in this world where everything's fired down your throat through ChatGPT or whatever else it might be, you must know the answer. You must be.
We're going to turn to that in a minute. Yeah.
It boils back down to you and me and the human making the decision and the relationships you've got with your senior leadership team, your ability to be tough and soft and warm and cold, and all of those things that a good leader needs to be able to actually get the very best from their team, regardless of what's going on. So if I look at our own business, last year it was a very tough year. We could focus on the tough year, or we could focus on making this year better. And as a team, we've done that, and I think so far we're 9 out of 10 profitable months, and the business has grown again. So if you'd asked me that in January, I couldn't have given you that answer. But it's a team sport. It is a team sport.
Yeah, I love the fact that you're embracing challenge as well as success. So in January, I think we were talking in January. So what were the sorts of key behaviours that you were really protective of with the team, given that you didn't know what the future held?
Yeah, I think culture was probably the culture and values. People spout those words over and over and over and over and over again. We can really kind of own the spirit of how we want to work together as a group of individuals. I think what we'd probably taken our eye off a little bit, and I had some issues going on with children having brain surgery and various other things, was individual partner performance. You can have the team and the infrastructure and your in our world, your researchers and your EAs and your support crew and your marketing, and all of that can be working. But at the end of the day, unless individual partners are developing either their sector expertise or their functional expertise, quite quickly you can be in a scenario where things aren't looking as rosy as they were the quarter before. And having done this for more than 3 decades, it's the same. We are only 1, maybe 2 quarters ahead from a planning point of view. Yeah. I had a fascinating. You get asked this question every year. We get asked, what's the planning plan for next year? And this is the sort of wider, broader Boyden. What's the UK going to do? What's Ireland going to do? Honestly, as much as any executive search business would like to tell you, the honest answer is I have no idea, right? The answer that we will all spin is I'm certainly going to do the same, if not more, right? But the reality is we have, the market is moving so quickly these days. It's really hard to plan and to predict.
Yeah. And interestingly, just before we came to the recording, we were just chatting about how moments in time, so the UK's economic view at the moment is going to have a massive impact on businesses, on confidence, on whether people are going to hire or not. So, there's a lot that is outside your control. I'd love to dig into the fact that you alluded to, if this is okay, you alluded to balancing stuff going on outside of work, stuff going on inside of work, and actually what do you think works for you as a leader? Because you will not be treading that path alone. There'll be lots of leaders out there, and I think it would be good for people to hear from you in terms of what made the biggest difference for you being able to do that.
It's so I'm going to combine both the extra non-work and work. Given the level of data and the number of influences in the work environment we have around us, it is really, really hard to switch off. It's really, really hard to find that time to be, a good father, to play sport if you're a sports person at any particular level, to maintain those things. I work with a coach, a chap called Andy Wolf, who's supported us over the years. And he always had this thing around sort of the 80-20 and trying to create space for growth in every day. And this concept of kind of, 20% of your time, it's not sort of sitting there reading books on how I can be the best leader, but that you're doing things that are ultimately going to improve your ability to do something else that does not relate to I've got to get a proposal out, I'm going to do a presentation to see a client, I've got to do an appraisal for someone in the business. Actually, on me, what am I doing to make sure I'm getting better at what I do at work, in work? And that for me is probably something that I would say to everybody is you have the time. Look at your diary. There is a load of noise in there, right? Everybody pick your diary up right now. Look at your week. You could get rid of probably 15 or 20% of the stuff that's in the diary. You don't need to be on the call. You're not that important. You're not going to add any influence to the decision-making tree. Get out, do stuff on your own and get on with it.
I think that's really good advice. And actually, we think our sweet spot for these podcasts are 20 to 30 minutes. It's enough to really think about doing things differently. And actually what you're saying is make that space, and it's 20% rule or the 20 minutes even. Yeah. And a growth mindset is all about that, isn't it? It's about finding those small marginal gains that really can push you forward.
Yeah, but if I turned around to you and said, look, take Friday off and just focus on yourself, you're like, that doesn't work. So it just has to be something that is built into your everyday. And it could be, listening to podcasts on the way home every day or whatever, something that is just putting some different influence into your head that allows you to think differently. Because if you do the same thing over and over again, you're going to get the same result.
Exactly, yeah. I think we all know what you're talking about there. So you've been at the heart of so many UK organisations, and your focus is always about talent. It's about choosing and working with the best leaders to create high-performing businesses. So tell us about that. Has the leadership challenges changed and what's really at the tip of the spear these days from your perspective?
Yeah, so historically we would be... we would build a relationship with somebody to solve a hiring issue, right? So it was a recruitment conversation, and I'm going to go all the way through the 90s and the 2000s, and that's really what that was. And that was either interim management or executive search. Now, all of my conversations are around the performance of the team and why you're hiring this person and how that person is going to influence the performance of the team. So the conversation actually is around high-performing teams first. Yes, you need to hire somebody. The process of executive search, whether you work with us or whether you work with another executive search firm, they'll try and spin plates. It's the same, right? It is. It is the same. The difference is actually the organization's ability to actually understand your strategy, understand the leaders that you've got around the table. Because you can go out and hire the best CFO in the world, but if half of the rest of your team is just going to kibosh that individual's ability to succeed, save your money, do something else, right? So we like to look at the C and C minus one, so that basically the top, and depending on the size of the organization, but we are effectively as an organization predominantly mid-market companies, so companies up to about maximum 5 billion in revenue, although we work with bigger clients, but we tend to be a bit further down the food chain with them. So most of the time, you can get your arms around that senior leadership team. And most of the time, they are desperate because they haven't done it to have somebody to put their arms around them. And the influence we can have, and I always say, I've never had a proper job in my life, but the influence that I've had on senior leadership teams is simply just getting them to talk. getting them to communicate and highlighting individual strengths, individual traits, and why am I going to go to Esther? What is your one go-to for in a scenario where you're in an organization on a senior leadership team? Why are you going to go to Nick? Nick might think it's because he's a good salesman or because he's great at marketing or people. Well, actually, it might be because the rest of the team around you see you as the individual that knows the market better than anybody else. Yes. So if that's your trait, that's what you then, the superpower that you bring to the table, if you like.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I think you're right. I think the times have changed where it's about individuals, having a single star in a team. Actually, you need the whole team pulling together. And actually, that's a lot of the work we do as well. So it really resonates. So taking that theme forward, where have you seen the biggest, almost like the biggest vulnerabilities of a team then? Because obviously you're working inside teams, you're reading it across. What do you think leaders should be looking out for when they're thinking about their own performance and capability?
Yeah, I mean, I think we live in a world where actually you can be a bit more honest about your strengths and your weaknesses. You look at bring mental health into that as well as an issue. There's a ton of that around, and it probably sits in more than half of any organization's senior leadership team. So I think there is, for me, the most successful leadership teams are fully aware of, if you like, and I'm not a particular fan of this bring your whole self to work, right?
Okay.
But if a senior leadership team understands that the HR director's mother is unbelievably unwell and is a distraction, if that's not known, it could be seen that the performance of that individual wasn't up to scratch. So there's something for me around, it's not having everything out on the table, but really working with each other to make sure that you understand what are my decision making styles, what are my work motivation styles, why do I turn up, right?
Yeah.
And your reason for turning up or the CEO's reason for turning up is going to be very different to the CFO's. If you don't know it, you're not a team. I mean, I bring it back to sport every time. If you don't know the way Marcus Smith in rugby is going to kick the ball, or if you don't know how, I don't know, a Toje is going to run into a ruck and where you need to be, if you don't know those small bits of detail, you're not going to be as efficient, as effective as you possibly can be.
Yeah. And I think let's take that analogy further, actually, because to be able to know those things, you've got to have trust amongst yourselves. So I think trust is the piece that means that you are willing to share that your parents are having difficulties or that you are being torn in different ways. So I think that's a really big element. And I also think it's knowing where they're going to take the ball, to use your analogy, but also being there to catch it as well. And again, that needs that trust within the team. Where have you seen any catastrophic gaps, and what would you say to leaders listening around that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking that in terms of kind of toxic cultures, and obviously I won't go into any specific details.
Yes, but we're not going to name any names. It's more around No,
completely. But it is extraordinary how in, let's say, a senior leadership team of 8 people, that the dynamic of 2 can destroy the performance of all. And I have seen that in small 40, 50 million turnover businesses. I've seen it in businesses that are turning over 1.5 billion, where the success of the organization is being impacted by the behaviors of 1, 2, or 3 people. And we've all tried to iron politics out of what exists in the boardroom. It exists. You have to work it, you have to play it, you have to understand it. But I think what's happening now is, command and control, CEO was there telling everybody what to do. It's not the case. And that's, again, to just connect that with the sporting analogy. And I remember writing something a while back around, there's a captain in every phase of play. So if we stick with rugby, because that's the one that I love the most.
Because that's your sport, isn't it? Yeah.
It is absolutely my sport, and foolishly still playing it. But this idea that there's a captain in every phase of play is ultimately, if there's a scrum, there's some stuff going on, there's somebody leading that, there's a team, and then everybody is then moving on to that next phase, and there's a team in that moment and a team in that moment. And if you think about what any organization does, whether it makes things or sell things, or whether it's services or product, every single component part has to deliver to the next stage effectively, efficiently. And if you have these dynamics that ultimately are human, all about communication, all about relationships, and you're just letting it go, your culture's gone,
Yes.
and your ability to deliver product and make money is impacted.
Yeah, yeah, it's really, really interesting because they say culture eats strategy, don't they? And actually, you can have the
Yeah.
best laid plans, but if you don't have the team working together, setting the right behaviours and the right culture, then you know it's not going to come to fruition. So that's super interesting. Now, I can't let this podcast go without talking to you about AI, and you nodded to it with ChatGPT at the beginning. And actually, you know, we're very much of the mindset that AI is a tool that you use, but it still requires leaders making great decisions and leading
Hmm.
through it.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts on that? What are you starting to see filter through in your work?
Yeah, look, it's we. I actually brought in a piece of AI to the organisation that we're now using globally, and the way that I see it is it's an enabler,
Yeah,
and it can't do what. And I would argue, certainly at the level at which we're operating at, it is going to be a long time before it can make a judgment call on whether
yeah.
somebody is
It's
going to
not
fit
sentient, is
culturally
it?
with a leader. So I think because if you're in the recruitment industry and you're at entry level, I would argue it's game over.
Yeah,
And it's game over in the next 10 years because that can be done by AI. It will be done by AI. So how do we embrace it? So we use it to help us make absolutely sure that we are researching every corner of every possible reference to identify who the best leaders are for each role that we're working for. We're using it to help us actually skim out. We get a lot of CVs, as you can imagine. So we're
yeah,
helping it to, at a very simple level, take out people that we just don't work with. So I would say more than half the CVs we get are from managers rather than executives.
okay,
It's of no value. As much as it's difficult for the manager to perhaps hear
yes,
this, there is no value to them or to us to engage in a conversation because we're not going to be able to help them. So
no,
the ability to use AI to bring that stuff out, to efficiently manage it, to send messages saying thank you very much, and go and speak to these, all of that stuff takes hours and hours and hours and hours of time off the infrastructure of my business, which allows that infrastructure to then focus on delivery. So I hope it has some fences put around it because I think at the
yeah,
moment there are some significant nerves about what about how far AI will go. But fast forward to quantum computing, and we're all going to be sitting at home being paid by the state because we're not going to have to do anything, right? A huge enabler. I have an assistant, an AI assistant. I have an EA, a real one, Jess, and I have an AI assistant called Kaya. And she helps me do stuff, and Jess helps me do stuff, and they communicate with each other. It's bizarrely seamless, but it took me about 3 or 4 weeks just to get into the habit
did it?
that. But I see myself as talking to a person, although I know it's clearly AI.
Yeah,
But it's a very human interaction.
very responsive.
Yeah,
Yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah. Really interesting. And what would you say the watch outs therefore are for leaders? How do you strike the right balance between using it for efficiency, effectiveness, the data piece, all of that, of course it's far, far superior than sort of the traditional
Yeah, I
methods.
mean, I think look, there's an intellectual property watch out for everybody,
Yeah.
which is uh, you know if you took our industry specifically, let's say you sent me your CV and I decided to just drop that into ChatGPT to give me a view on you. Well, I mean, I've broken every GDPR rule I possibly could.
That's it.
Your numbers on there, your home address is on there, your background information, confidential
Wow.
information from your clients is on there, right? So it doesn't matter what you do. I think organizations aren't policing how their employees are engaging with the likes of ChatGPT or others, and we have our own LLM that we're working with, which is the Kaya system. So for us, we're working in a protected bubble, and we feel safe and confident in what we're doing. So there's a massive issue around that. I think there's a bigger human issue around fear, and fear
Mm.
at probably the lower and middle ends of an organization that, well, I might not have a job in 5 years' time.
Exactly.
Actually, I've just come out of university. I've worked my backside off. I'm 60 grand in debt. And everything I'm hearing is that the roles that I'm likely to be in over the next 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 years are either going to disappear or augment into something else. So that creates, uncertainty, concern, worry, and all of that then leads to impact on performance.
Yeah, yeah. Fear is always going to have that effect, isn't it? And I've also been thinking about confidence, that we need to instill in people to use it, because if they've got that worry, they've also got to think about how it can assist and help too. So really interesting things. The ethics piece, I think, is really key, because not enough organisations are thinking about that. We actually are developing a training module with just that in mind, almost like the ethics and the equity piece. How do you use it well? But actually use it as a leader, not as sort of this tool that you give over all your judgment to, because it's
And
not
also,
there yet.
what's it been built on, right? If it's been
What's it
built
built
on,
on?
if you look at inclusion more broadly and equity more broadly, if the models have been built on data that has not demonstrated inclusivity, the outcome to the person receiving this answer, and that's the answer, it's come out of championship, must be the answer,
Must be the
is
answer.
skewed. Is skewed.
Absolutely.
So that is going to take. I mean, there's already been cases on that. That is going to take some time to iron
Yeah.
out. Again, coming back to however much we decide to use AI, we have a relationship with the client where we have promised them to deliver them something, be that a fully inclusive shortlist, be it a focused shortlist from a particular industry sector. We can rely on AI to do some basic stuff, but at the end of the day, we've got to get out there and do the stuff that we do every day of
Yeah.
the week, which is identify the best person for the job.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a really important point, and something that we are working with clients on, that whole piece around iterate, challenge AI, test it, validate it, you know, remove the biases, because inevitably it's sweeping data, but you still need human judgment around it. You still need somebody to put your gaze over it, say, is this shortlist actually meeting expectations, or are they drawing on the wrong data? So yeah, it's
I think
augmenting our skills.
completely, and specifically to our industry, the more you end up in the contingent recruitment world, which is where you've decided to just ask anybody to send you some CVs,
Yeah,
you're going to get. I personally, I just think the quality is going to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse.
yeah,
It's not going to get better and better. It's going to get
no.
worse.
And that's why I think good leaders need to be in the driving seat on it, not just devolve it,
Yeah.
but actually be part of, okay, let's test it, let's validate it, let's understand it. Yeah,
Yeah.
good.
And it then
Okay, well,
draws back, and just very finally on that, it draws back into that piece around, I'm not just hiring it's not just that my HR director has left or I need a CIO. It's what is this piece of the jigsaw for that
yes,
team to be seamless, for there to be no gaps, for that to be as effective as possible. It costs a lot of money to recruit people. It costs a lot of money to pay people. It costs a huge amount of money to fire people, right? So doing it right is absolutely critical.
absolutely, yeah. So I'd like to ask you a couple of questions just around, we've got leaders listening now, they might be the very people that are sending you their CVs, and actually they're not ready yet, or they've got some work to do around their career. What would you say that you would see as the sort of skills that they absolutely need to be looking at as a leader going forward if they aspire to more senior levels?
Yeah, I mean, I think constant learning. So some sort of learning journey that sits throughout their career, where they're continually pushing the boundaries. Um, I think it's incredibly important that they can demonstrate team rather than I. So the we and the I thing of action. And often we'll have in the past somebody would come in and say, we did this, we did that, we did the other, and I would be questioning them on whether or not
Yeah,
it was them that was doing it. That's actually shifted now, which is okay.
interesting.
We did it. What role did you play in the we? Right. So I
Yes,
think it's incredibly important that leaders are not standalone engines.
yeah,
Honestly, it will break companies at the end of the day. So, at a management level, what are you doing to improve your team skills? What are you doing to improve your leadership management skills? How did you demonstrate that? What examples can you show me of where you've gone into a difficult team environment and actually transformed it, and how? Right? Not came in, it was bad, left, it was good.
I fired a few people and then it was good. It's the opposite. Yeah.
How did you do it? Yeah. And then that gets quite granular at that point in terms of, but I think we are fortunate in the fact that our education system, I know it's under a lot of pressure, but both education and training in UK and UK kind of PLC more broadly, go back 20 years, it was not being taken as seriously as it's taken now. And organizations, even in the downtimes, are still investing in leadership development, leadership consulting, because they know it'll retain staff, it'll improve staff, and it'll improve performance.
Yeah, that's great. So what has been a personal strategy for you to see you through your success? If you were to pinpoint one or two behaviours or principles, whatever it is, Nick, what has helped you succeed that you think others could learn from?
I'm not great on the sort of devil in the detail stuff, right? So I rely very heavily on making sure that I've got the right people around me. So I've talked specifically about, I've had a business partner for 20 years with Lisa Farmer. Enormously reliant, right, on me spinning the plates or throwing the plate up, and her ultimately making sure that it doesn't fall off. So I think having your tribe, having in whatever situation you're in, the sort of the support. If you think about Formula One, having that the mechanics around you to be able to make sure you can perform, because on my own I'm going to be sat in the garage, right? And that's the reality. So that for me, from a business perspective, is probably the most important thing. I have a really, really, really strong team around me. My finance director, my operations manager, my business partner, my chairman. The people that support me make my life a little bit easier.
Well, you've already shouted out for a couple of them. We're about to close. Any last thoughts on, what would help leaders be more successful as we're heading into the, in the future?
I think if you do not have a plan to get underneath the skin of who your team is, get one quickly. You've got, we're time-wise, we're at the tail end of the year, but go into next year knowing your team better than you know them now, because the chances are, if you're listening to this, if you really sit back and go, do I actually know what Mary or Jane or Ed or I don't. I know they turn up to work every day and they're committed and they're loyal, but I don't actually know them. And so, get to know your team. You'll get stronger. You'll deliver better.
Yeah, what a great note to end on. And that's been the theme, actually, for all of our conversations, hasn't it? Arms around a team, understand the dynamics, know when they're going to make the pass. And final words from your dog as well, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Decided to join in.
Yeah, so look, thank you. I've been joined by Nick Robeson, who is the managing partner and CEO of Boyden. It's been great chatting with you. The time has flew. Thank you so much for being our guest.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Esther. Take care. See you soon.